Describe what it was like working there on October 7th. What did you see in the coverage?
The first thing I saw was the headline, and the one word that was missing was terrorist.
What did they call Hamas?
Freedom fighters, and they called Hamas militants.
The BBC called Hamas freedom fighters. I'm Zach Sage Fox. Since 10/7, the BBC has been under fire for anti-Semitic coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. So I've met up with a BBC whistleblower to reveal the truth.
My name's Noah Abrahams. I am a Northwest London Jew, proud to be British, extraordinarily proud to be Jewish.
When did you start seeing anti-Semitism explode within the company?
Before 10/7, every time there's a story in Israel, the attitude would be negative. The narrative would be negative. No positivity towards Israel.
Shocking, considering that Israel is the only democracy in the entire Middle East, the only country where gays live freely, the only country where women have equal rights. This is something that you would think liberals would commend, a project that liberals would celebrate.
You think so, but no. And why? What is the root of that hard line no? Why aren't they celebrating it? In my view, it's an underlying level of anti-Semitism. An epidemic of anti-Semitism that has been there so long. Now, unfortunately, the ugly head has popped out of those clouds. Whereas before, they were tiptoeing around the anti-Semitism. It had always been there, but now it's been exposed.
Describe what it was like working there on October 7th. What did you see in the coverage that day?
October 7th, it was like any other day, and the first thing I saw was the headline, and the one word that was missing was terrorist. And I couldn't believe, I genuinely couldn't believe
What did they call Hamas?
Freedom fighters, and they called Hamas militants. Okay?
Freedom fighters. The BBC called Hamas freedom fighters.
And here's my issue with freedom fighters, apart from the fact that it's wholly untrue, is that it has positive implications.
Freedom, it could not be a more positive word. And it implies that they weren't free under someone else's will. Israel fully pulled out of Gaza 20 years ago in 2005.
Correct.
They pulled every Jew out, which was controversial, almost 10,000.
And here's the thing, you and I know this. Right, but millions of people watching the BBC do not.
But do the people at the BBC know this?
Of course they do. They're intelligent journalists.
So they're intentionally hiding the truth.
The truth is, you do not rise the ranks of an organisation like the BBC without having a brain. So how on earth these people have decided to close their eyes to what is happening, really happening in the world, what the British government is saying? The government call Hamas terrorists.
But that gets to my point of confusion. We're not talking about CNN or MSNBC. We're talking about a British government-funded news organization. How is it that the government labels Hamas as a terrorist group, but the media doesn't?
So the BBC are the state broadcaster. We as the British taxpayer pay our license fee to the BBC, but the government themselves have no control over editorial standards at the BBC. So the BBC effectively grade their own homework.
But don't they feel some sort of obligation to at least follow government policy? And if the policy is that Hamas is a terrorist group, hiding that should be a crime.
The Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, on October 7th, begged the BBC, urged the BBC to call Hamas terrorists. Without using that word, the people in the United Kingdom who watch the BBC have no idea what's really going on.
So what are the conversations happening on October 7th and in the days after? You're employed by this company who is quite literally hiding the genocidal caliphate intentions of this terrorist group.
You want to hear the conversation I had with an editor at the BBC?
Please tell.
The conversation I had was, this is outrageous, it's a disgrace to not call Hamas a terrorist organisation, and their response was, here's a podcast on BBC editorial stand, go and listen to it and you might be sort of more understanding of our policies.
And what did the podcast say?
The podcast was the BBC are a neutral organisation, which of course they're not. There is a 100% bias against Israel. It's unquestionable. You only have to look at the two recent documentaries that they've put out. One was on the horror of the Nova Music Festival, where they still, in that documentary, would not call Hamas terrorists. I remember being in the car, listening to the radio and hearing a BBC News report, this is well after October 7th, describing Hamas as freedom fighters. And I wanted to stop my car and take a breather and get out, because I could not believe it, especially having fought so hard personally. For these guys who have a very rich history in the UK, a very prestigious name, to do the right thing and to use one simple word, but they won't.
And by the way, it's not just them. I mean, this is happening in America too. The AP, same thing. They're supposed to be the gold standard of language for journalism. They also removed the word terrorist a few years ago from their lexicon.
I'll tell you a story. I'm sitting in Southampton Synagogue 2 months after October 7th, and the director of editorial standards comes and sits in front of an audience of Jews who are in despair. It was still so raw then, it's still raw now.
This is in a synagogue.
This was in a synagogue, and when asked the question on why we, the BBC, are not calling Hamas a terrorist group, this director made the comparison between Nelson Mandela and Hamas. He said that Nelson Mandela was once labelled a terrorist, but he went on to be a revered leader of South Africa. He very hastily withdrew what he'd said, but it was too late. The apology came too late. He had implied that just as Nelson Mandela went on to change his ways and become this great man, so could Hamas. They could go from a terrorist group to a peace-loving franchise. An audience of 200 Jewish people were in despair.
Sure, I'm sure they were terrified.
It's terrifying, it's beyond upsetting, and the BBC have seemed to have completely ignored terrorism. Again, you look back at this recent documentary, Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone, where the narrator is the son of a Hamas minister. They knew full well when going there that there were going to be mishaps. You're never going to get the truth when you're interviewing the son of the Deputy Minister for Agriculture for Hamas. The camera guy celebrated October 7th on his Facebook. I'll tell you the real obvious. If you speak Arabic or any hints of Arabic, then you can see that they've changed the subtitles.
That was nuts.
That's unbelievable, right? Yehud means Jew in Arabic.
Yeah, they changed jihad against Jews. There's no nuance in that sentence.
So we are against Israelis.
Yeah, but none of that's in the documentary.
But none of that's in the documentary.
And by the way, this comes out at a time in the middle of these hostage terrorist parades. The Gazans are posting videos of all of the children with machete guns, Hamas headbands, high-fiving the Hamas terrorists, literally going up to the pictures of the dead babies Hamas killed and their mother, spitting on the poster, ripping the poster, pointing and laughing at the poster. That is child abuse. They are abusing these kids to become terrorists. And the fact that the BBC saw none of that in this footage, while Gazans are posting actual footage of what life is like for children there.
That is the astonishing thing, is that Hamas are laughing at these guys. Hamas,
laughing.
They cannot believe their luck. But the point is that the BBC, a national funded broadcaster, are feeding into the hands of Hamas and are putting out exactly what Hamas want the Western world to see.
And they're buying it.
Of course they're buying it.
I was just in the UK. I did my first undercover report at a pro-Hamas rally in London, one of the ones that's been happening every week since October 7th. And the thing that shocked me that was a big difference from America, you see support for Hamas in America, but it's not the easiest to get people on camera without their face fully covered to say how much they love Hamas. When I did this report in London a couple weeks ago, I could not get over how everyone said how much they love Hamas, cheer Hamas, with their faces fully exposed because they know the government's not going to do anything.
The Metropolitan Police stand there and watch, right? Meanwhile, they won't let a Jewish guy cross the road. They won't let Gideon Falter, who's the CEO of the campaign against anti-Semitism, cross the road.
How long after October 7th did you stay at the BBC?
5 days.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow. And it was so bad that you felt like you needed to speak up and leave.
I gave him a chance. I mean, in those 5 days, it was just appalling.
Videos of like literally Hamas filming, posting all their crimes. There's no question of whether this is terrorism. They're posting their terrorism. They want the world to see their terrorism. And yet BBC is so spineless that they won't call them terrorists.
Jeremy Bowen comes out and protects them, one of their real top dogs at the BBC, and protects their neutrality, which drives me mad.
And there's nothing neutral about terrorism.
But why, if the British government are calling Hamas terrorists, are the BBC not following that law? Now the BBC call them prescribed terrorists. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it for me.
And the problem is they don't realize the harm, or maybe they do realize the harm they are doing. I just went to Colombia, right? And a lot of these students get their news from BBC. Can right be justified?
There's nuance.
Just release Palestinian terrorists. Are you excited about that?
Of course.
Resistance is justified.
I met a girl outside Barnard, and I caught her with my spy pen, and she told me terrorism was nuanced. Rape, under the guise of decolonialism, is nuance. They're learning these things from not only the academia that they're a part of, but they're learning it from the media who is enabling all this.
A diplomatic correspondent at the BBC called the hostages returning to Israel, our hostages, nauseating propaganda.
What do they think they're accomplishing by supporting Hamas like this, by cushioning the caliphate?
I think they are accomplishing freedom of speech. Somehow they believe they are accomplishing peace. They cannot see who the antagonists are in this war.
Weren't there people at the BBC who fully like celebrated October 7th who were still working there?
Yeah.
Fully celebrated on retweeting stuff, posting?
Yeah. One of the editors at BBC Three I celebrated October 7th and still had a job at the BBC.
So what are the Jews who support Israel that work at the BBC? What do you think is going on through their heads? And do you know anyone who's still there that's a Jew? And do you know what's going on in their heads?
Yeah, I know them, and they're conflicted. Personal pride or morals and ethics? You know, which one do you choose? If I had chosen pride or my career, I would have had a great life in London. But I didn't choose that path. I chose the path of speaking out against these people because words have meaning and they are powerful.
Thank you so much, man.
Zach,
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming out. Good luck in America, man. You got a bright future ahead of you.